According to Sigmund Freud, particularly why do we believe in religion like God? Now when Sigmund Freud talks about religion, he is talking about not Buddhism or anything, right? He is basically talking about God-centered religion. In Europe, it is the Christianity, Judaism or Islam. So in that sense, God-centered religion, he says, psychoanalytic investigation of the unconscious mental life. Now, according to Sigmund Freud, a lot of things we do as adults start from very unconscious state of mind as small children. So something that was unconscious. Now unconscious means you don't even know about them clearly. That is what it means to say unconscious. You don't even know about them. So unconscious mental life reveals that religious belief correspond closely. Now religious beliefs closely correspond, related with the fantasies of infantile life. Fantasies of infantile life. Fantasy means, the things we create in our mind. Things we want to do as infant children. The things we create, stories we create, the kind of things we create in our mind. So the infantile life, mainly unconscious ones. These fantasies are again unconscious. Concerning the sexual life of one's parents. Now for example, a child may have certain unconscious things about mother and father. Now it is a very well-known idea. When someone is a small boy, he develops an attraction to his mother, according to Freud. When consciously, even without your knowledge, certain things about your parents are developed in your mind according to religion. So why do people believe in God? According to Sigmund Freud, this something to do with our infantile fantasies we develop. Something developed we develop as the children. So even though it started as the infantile, like childish thing, we grow up with that belief, then we continue to have that belief in God. Okay, so that is according to Sigmund Freud. Now, finally, I have definition from Karl Marx. Now, this definition is also very, very important and also very well known in the world. Now, how does Karl Marx define religion? According to Karl Marx, religion is the sigh of an oppressed creature, the heart of a heartless world. Just as it is the spirit of spiritless situation, it is the opium of masses. It is the opium of masses. This last sentence is, very well known all over the world because according to Karl Marx, religion is the opium of the masses. What is the opium? Opium is something actually today we don't hear very much, but say last century and the 19th century, say about more than 100 years ago, people in the world smoke opium in order to get intoxicated. Like today people have alcohol or people take drugs today. Now those days this kind of drugs were not there. What was there was opium. Opium is more like, I think some people chew it, like took it from the mouth. The others smoke it. So when you get addicted to it, you can't get rid of it. So the opium causes addiction. Addiction means you get addicted to something. You cannot, even though you want addict, addiction. You get addicted to something. You cannot be away with that. You can't get rid of that. That is the addiction. So opium is what you get addiction. Now here you see again this definition of religion. According to Karl Marx is the religion according to European situation. Karl Marx is a German. He lived in England. So he lived in towards the last part of the 19th century. So it was basically the Christian religion. In the Christian religion, it was taught that in the 18th century, 19th century, situation in Europe was very unsatisfactory. A lot of people were very poor, and only some people were very rich, others were very poor. Then what happens was Christianity taught that you are poor because of your past bad karma, things you have done bad. So if you want to be born in the heaven, you have to be good in this life. Sigh of the oppressed creature. Now oppressed creature means the oppressed person who is oppressed by people with money and people with power. So those people don't have any place to turn toward. They have only religion. Okay, only religion. And then heart of a heartless world. Religion is the only one religion that sympathizes with them. But of course religion will say that you are suffering because of the God's will. You are suffering because you did not do things, the good things, that sort of thing. So, heartless world. Just as it is the spirit of spiritless situation, when your whole energy is lost, but still, religion is supposed to provide energy to you. When you think about God, when you think about religion. And then ultimately it is the opium of masses, because it works as the opium, it works as the addiction. People get addicted to religion. People don't have anywhere else to go. So in other words, in Europe during that period, religion justified the existing wrong system. People are poor, people are suffering, but religion says that okay, in order to be born in the heaven next life, you have to bear the suffering. You can't change it, you have to accept it, you have to bear it, and then by being good people who can bear it, you will be born in the heaven in the next world or something. So that was what religion said. So Karl Marx's definition of religion comes from that. Religion is the sigh of an oppressed creature, the heart of a heartless world. Just as it is the spirit of spiritless situation, it is the opium of the masses. Now, when we look at these religions, we can ask a question, is Buddhism a religion in that sense? Terms used in the discourses refer to the teachings of the Buddha, Sasana and Dhamma Vinaya. I will come to this point later, but I will move into the next one and then see. Now, okay, what we saw are some definitions of religion. Now, a religion usually includes the following. When we talk about religion today, actually religion includes not only belief, as we said earlier. It is not only the belief, religion includes 4 things. Now what I am saying is religion includes a system of belief. System of belief, doctrines and teachings, a set of practices, rites and rituals, an organization with hierarchical structure of clergy, sacred text and objects. In fact, when we look at these four things, this is common to any religion, including Buddhism, okay? This is common to any religion, including Buddhism. Not only for the kind of religion we define so far, but if you look at carefully, any religion you have these 4 aspects. Number 1 is a system of beliefs. There are certain things we believe. Now for example, in the theistic religion, God-centered religion, you believe in God exists. In the theistic religion, you believe that God exists. And also you believe that heaven exists. And also you believe that hell exists. So like that, there is a set of beliefs for any religion. People believe. In other words, that's more for the psychological aspect of religion. The religion has a very important psychological aspect. So the system of beliefs, what person believes. So that's the number 1. And then religion has doctrines and teachings. Religion has doctrines and teachings. So if you take any religion, there are doctrines. For example, in Christianity, there are certain things what is called dogma. Dogma means the beliefs that have to be accepted without any question. You begin with dogma. So in Christianity, you have dogmas. In the same manner, if you take any religion, there are different religious beliefs. For example, as Buddhists, we believe karma, rebirth, and things like that. So there are a set of beliefs, and that's the belief aspect, and then doctrines and teachings. So there are doctrines and teachings in a religion. So in any religion, there is a doctrinal aspect. Explanation of heaven, hell, and other things. So the doctrinal aspect is one aspect. Now in Buddhism, if you take doctrines, we know that 4 Noble Truths, 8-fold Path. So 37 Bodhipakkhya Dhamma, Paticcasamuppada. So in that manner, in Buddhism there is a set of doctrines. Okay. Now next one is a set of practices, rites and rituals. The third one is very important. You have a set of practices, beliefs, things we do. Now in Buddhist terminology we can call it Patipatti. Pariyatti, Patipatti and Pativeda. So Patipatti means practice. Now there are things we do religiously. So the practices, things. If you look at any religion, you can see that in the religions have different practices. Buddhism also has practices. You have the practice of Vassana and then Kathina. Now these are not common to other religions, right? These are only in Buddhism you find them. So these are practices. These are the things you do. And then finally there is an organization with hierarchical structure, clergy, sacred text and objects. Now the 4th aspect is the organizational aspect. When you say religion, it has an organizational aspect. If you take Christianity, you have Pope and then cardinals. from Pope down you have cardinals, bishops and priests. Any religion has, the clergy. Aspect, but when we use the word today, religion, actually we are using this term to indicate mainly these things: a system of belief, doctrines and teachings, a set of practices, rites and rituals, and also an organizational structure, organization. Along with that, we have other concept. When we talk about religion, there is a division of what is called sacred and profane in religion. Sacred and profane in religion. Now in religions, you have this distinction. Certain things to be sacred, certain things to be profane. Now certain now profane means something not sacred, something worldly. Things belonging to the world are considered to be the profane. Now if you take religion, in a religion, even the religious place is considered to be sacred. So people pay homage, like when people pass a religious place, if they are traveling in a bus or car, they kind of try to stand up and show respect. They bow their head and try to show respect. Before religious people come and bow down. Before the monks and nuns, people come and bow down. Why? Because those people are considered to be sacred. Religious building, we remove shoes and we come without shoes because that is considered to be sacred. In this country, in the 19th century, in Myanmar, when the British came, British refused to remove their shoes. There was a very big issue about it because people never like the British coming into the sacred places with shoes. So it so happened that if they did not remove their shoes, so British people were held up like this, were taken in, but the Buddhists never allowed the place to be touched with shoes. I hope you know that stories in the recent history of Burma. Because, the sacred places are considered to be so sacred that, in our culture we believe that you must not wear shoes. Okay. But it depends on different cultures. To a sacred place with your shoes. Because the place is considered to be sacred. And the people are considered to be sacred. Places are considered to be sacred. And also texts are considered to be sacred. A Dhamma book, you don't just throw it away. You respect the book. You pay homage to the book. Why? Because you consider it to be sacred. But if you are not a Buddhist, Buddhist books are not sacred to you. The Christian people, the Bible is sacred. But if you are not a Christian, Bible is not sacred to you. So it's like that. But basically a religion has these two domains. These domains are sacred and profane. So the sacred is the term that is used to denote the religious objects, the religion. So the sacred is considered to be religious. The profane means something not sacred. In other words, here religion, based on religion, the world is divided into two parts. There are certain sacred objects and there are the other things are profane. Something that is not included in religion are considered to be profane. Now, there is a very well-known book by author of religion. The title of the book is Sacred and Profane in Religion. Now, these two concepts are considered to be two categories. So, when we say something is sacred, we say that it's associated with religion. Okay. Now, again, we can see that this concept of sacredness is developed in religions from the beginning. Not only in Christianity or Judeo-Christian tradition religions, but also in Buddhism and other religions, we have this concept of sacredness. You remember in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, Buddha says to Venerable Ananda that there are 4 places associated with the Buddha's life that faithful follower of the Buddha would want to visit. The place where Buddha was born, the place where Buddha attained enlightenment, the place where Buddha gave the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta first sermon, and then place where Buddha attained parinirvana. Buddha says that these 4 places are worthy of attending by faithful followers. Now, what is the meaning of this? The place where the Buddha is born, the place where Buddha attained enlightenment. Now, there you can see the certain places become sacred because of certain events in religion. So, in India, these 4 places are considered to be sacred because they are associated with the life of the Buddha. And then, if you have any place associated with the life of the Buddha, it is the same thing. Like in Sri Lanka, we believe that Buddha visited Sri Lanka 3 times, and then during these 3 times, he visited different places. Identified 16 places. Now these 16 places are respected even today because we believe that Buddha visited. We have Sri Pada, where the Buddha's footprint is located. We believe that located because we respect that place because we believe that Buddha's real footprint is there. So the sacred objects. Okay. Now I see in this country, sometimes when the great Buddhist monk passed away, there is kind of museum with his spectacles, with the walking stick he used, and with the chair, table he used. Why? Because these things are considered to be sacred. So this idea of sacredness is something very popular in religion. Now in our day-to-day life, certain objects are very dear to us. Like say for example, if you love your mother so much, whatever your mother uses is dear to you. But those are not really sacred. Those are considered to be very dear to you because of your relationship with your mother. But in a religion, the difference is what is considered to be sacred is common to all the followers of that religion. So it has a much broader applicability. So where we believe that Buddha's footprint is there, it is important for all the Buddhists. Okay, so like that. So the sacred is a category. Sacred is the idea associated with religion. So because religious things are associated with sacredness, other things are considered to be the profane or not, sacred. And then also we have esotericism and exotericism in religion. Now esotericism and exotericism means basically, esotericism means we can say internal. Exotericism means external. Now, when we talk about religions, there is another category. This important thing is esotericism and exotericism. Now, esotericism means, number one, esotericism means something that is included in religion. That means include few things that are considered to be internal, and there are certain things external. Now, for example, just to give you an example, in religion there are certain things you can see in public. There are certain things you cannot see in public. For example, we will take the Katina Pinkama yesterday here. You can see esotericism and exotericism. People come and people do offerings, and all these things are what people can see. Anybody can participate. But however, the Pavarana associated with Katina is not for everybody, right? Pavarana is performed only by the Upasampada monks, right? No ordinary people can take part in that. So Pavarana is what is called internal. However, Katina is external. All people come to the temple and the monastery, and they make offerings, they give dana. So in religions you have this thing. Certain things are considered to be the internal. Certain things are considered to be external. So what you see from outside is internal. Now in Buddhist monasteries we have casket of relics of the Buddha. But you see the casket, but you don't see the relics. Because relics is internal. In Sri Lanka we have tooth relic of the Buddha, and we believe that every year there is a big huge procession, but they never take tooth relic out. You never see the tooth relic. What you see is only the casket. Even we don't know whether it is the real casket or not, but what you see is something outside. You don't see the inside. So the religion has this, not only in Buddhism. I just gave you some examples from Buddhism because we are familiar with. But in any religion there are certain things exoteric and certain things esoteric. Certain things external, certain things internal. However, this idea is little deeper than the objects. The idea is deeper in the sense, sometimes in religions there are certain teachings, certain doctrines, certain ideas given only to very close people. They are not given outside. Now you remember, Indian example is Upanishad. I think you all have heard about Upanishad, right? Upanishad literature. Upanishad means, in the Vedic tradition, Veda, Aranyaka, Brahmana, Upanishad. Upanishad. It comes from like that. Upanishad means the idea that a teacher would reveal only to his trusted pupil. He will not give that to anybody and everybody. Okay? He will give it only to the trusted pupil. So that is the idea of Upanishad. Now, Upanishad is a very good example for esotericism, internal. You are not giving it to anybody and everybody. So what is in the Upanishads were given only to the trusted, the best student. Okay? Now, Buddhism, it is very clear that Buddha did not accept this idea. Again, in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, you must Which means that Buddha says that I taught the doctrine to you all without any distinction. Buddha never considered to be some disciples to be internal and some disciples to be external. So therefore Buddha did, like in the Upanishad, Buddha didn't teach certain things only to some people. Buddha taught everything to everybody. Buddha never did that. Buddha says Buddha never did that. So that is why towards the end of his life, at the Parinirvana, Buddha says to the monks, ask any questions you have. But nobody asks questions, like in this class. Okay. Then Buddha said that, okay, if you don't ask questions directly, you get a friend to ask questions. If you don't want to ask it directly, you tell your friend to ask that on behalf of you. Even then, of course, there was no questions. But then Buddha said that I have taught everything without making it internal or external. So the Pali terms are anantarang abahirang katva. I taught the Dhamma without making it either abhantara, internal, or without making it either external. Okay. So, but in religions, in many religions, you can have this kind of things. So esotericism and exotericism in religion. So these are some of the characteristics of religions we can see. Now, I will go to the next. We have types of religion, theistic and non-theistic religions, theistic and monistic, and so on and so forth. However, before going into it, let me go to the question we left behind. Now here I ask whether is Buddhism a religion? Terms used in the discourses refer to the teachings of the Buddha as Sasana and the Dhamma Vinaya. Now you know what religion is. We look at the definition. Now the one question I can raise is whether Buddhism considered to be a religion in this sense. Whether Buddhism is a religion in this sense. Can we call Buddhism a religion? How do you answer this question? What is Buddhism? Is it a religion? Actually, when we look at the definition of religion, okay, when we look at the definition of religion, even here we have mysterium tremendum, numinous dread, and before that we have belief in superhuman controlling power, especially in a personal God. And then second, we have man's faith in a power beyond himself. Now, although we use the term religion to describe Buddhism, so we do believe that there are gods. But Buddhists don't believe in a superhuman creator God. Okay? So in that sense, you can see that Buddhism cannot be called religion in the sense it does not involve a belief in a superhuman controlling power, especially in a personal God. And then also man's faith in a power beyond himself. If a person believes about a power beyond himself and emotional needs. Now when you look at these things again, there is a question whether we can call Buddhism a religion. Particularly if you take religion, the defining character of religion as a belief in the superhuman God, actually Buddhism is not a religion. Okay. Now also we look at next definition in Mysterium Tremendum, Rudolf Otto, non-rational as the key characteristic of religion. Now here we see the mystery. Also we looked at the sense of fear or non-rational. So these three things. And if you look at carefully, we can see that in Buddhism we do not find these things. A mystery, sense of fear, in other words, people are not scared of the Buddha, but they are scared of God. So the small children, even small children, they go and play around the Buddha statue. They play hide and seek, all kinds of things, but they don't go to the gods trying to do that. Because you can see that in Buddhism, fear is not the basis of religion. Okay? But in God-centered religions, basically the fear of God. Fear is a very important factor. You are scared of God. You are afraid of God. Because basically God is associated with punishment. So God is the one who punishes. So if God punishes, God gets angry. But the concept of God in many religions is basically associated with the idea of, the punishing God, angry God. So the God is angry, God is punishing. So you can see, looking from that point of view, actually you cannot call Buddhism a religion. So the way the religion has been defined, you cannot call according to the definition. According to this definition, Buddhism cannot be described religion, right? And not only according to those definitions, even according to Sigmund Freud's definition or Karl Marx's definition. Now, Marxism is against religion, people believe. However, Marxist criticism of religion really came from the Christianity and the Western idea of religion. Okay. So the Marxist criticism of religion is not totally, some sense, certain things are applicable to Buddhism also, but not totally. So according to these definitions, we cannot say Buddhism is a religion. Okay. However, if you look at Now look at this thing. A religion usually includes the following: a system of belief, doctrines and teachings, a set of practices and rites and rituals, an organization with hierarchical structure of clergy, sacred texts and objects. Now I say that when we use the word religion today, now forgetting about the definition, forgetting about the dictionary definition, now how do we use this term today? When we are using this term today, we are using it to refer to these 4 different things. Now according to these 4 different things, is Buddhism a religion or not? Buddhism can be called a religion, right? Because in Buddhism, you can see all these 4 aspects. A system of beliefs. Have you seen this Venerable K. Sri Dhammananda's book, What Buddhists Believe? See, there are, if you want to know what Buddhists believe, you can look at K. Sri Dhammananda's book. So there are many things Buddhists believe. Belief in the sense Buddhists accept. That's what it means. We believe in the karma and the result. We believe in the punabhava, rebirth. So these are, these are the systems of belief. So the Buddhists believe these things. So we have in Buddhism a set of beliefs and doctrines and teachings. 4 Noble Truths, Eightfold Path, Patisamuppada, and so on. We have doctrines. And then set of practices, rites and rituals. Practices. What are the practices? Practices mean things we do associated with things. Like, going for alms, pindapata. It's a Buddhist practice, right? But of course in India, it was among the religious people, other Sramanas, Jaina tradition, all the Indian traditions have this concept of pindapata. But not Christianity, Judaism or Islam. They don't have that. So we do have certain practices. Observing Vasana is a Buddhist thing. Of course, Jainas have that too. So, there are certain Indian things. But there are these practices. And there are certain practices only for the Buddhist. Only Buddhists follow. Now, during the Vasana season, some people observe 8 precepts. Now, that's a Buddhist practice, rites and ritual. So, there are. Now, then the last one is an organization with hierarchical structure. So, we also have Sangha Council, Sangha Nayaka, Nayaka Thera, Mahanayaka, ministry, and in all these things, right? So, now if we look at how the word religion used today in language, we can see that religion is used to refer to all 4 of these things or any one or several of these things, okay? Now in that sense, we can say Buddhism is also a religion, right? Now, I hope what I am trying to tell you is clear. In a basic sense of defining religion as a belief in superhuman God, we cannot say Buddhism is a religion, okay? But however, in a general sense, the way the word is being used, we can say Buddhism is a religion. Now another important point is when you look at Buddhism, when you look at the teaching of the Buddha, how would the Buddha describe his own tradition? Now I think I said in the morning, the one word is sasana. One word is sasana. We have that sabda papassa karanam, kusalassa upasampada, sachitta pariyodapadam, etam buddhana sasanam. Sasana. What is the meaning of the word sasana? Basically, message, teaching. However, today when we say Buddha Sasana, we don't not only say the message of the Buddha, we say Buddha Sasana means the organization, right? We say Buddha Sasana exists in Myanmar. That means not only the teaching of the Buddha. There are monks, there are syalas, there are temples, there are all these things. So everything today we call it Sasana. Okay, so sasana originally means message, teaching. However, today we are using sasana as an organization. Okay, Buddha Sasana was established in Myanmar by Sona Uttara. So that means organization, right? So sasana. The other word the Buddha would use to describe his own system is Dhamma Vinaya. Imasmin Dhamma Vinaya. Now what is Dhamma and Vinaya? Dhamma Vinaya. Dhamma is the doctrine, Vinaya is the practice. So we can say in a way, Dhamma Vinaya, theory and practice. Or Dhamma, the doctrine, the teaching, Vinaya means discipline. So the teaching and the discipline, theory and the practice. Buddha says something and then the practice. So actually these are the two terms in the discourses you find to refer to the Buddha's teaching or Buddha's organization. So sasana. So not religion really. Now you can see that in that sense, although in English language we use the word religion today, in Buddhism we don't have a similar term. Term we have is sasana. Sasana originally means the message of the Buddha, and subsequently sasana means the organization. Okay? And the other one is Dhamma Vinaya. Dhamma Vinaya is basically the teaching and the practice. But Buddha uses it in Pali language, Imasmin Dhamma Vinaya, singular form, not two things. Imasmin Dhamma Vinaya means in this teaching and practice. So, Imasmin Dhamma Vinaya, in this organization. So you see, these are the two terms that are used. Why these two terms are very important? Because when you consider Buddhism as a religion, actually Buddha has viewed this as basically a teaching and the practice based on that. That was Buddhism. Now when the Buddha taught Dhamma, why did the Buddha teach Dhamma to people? Just to show that he is a good preacher? No. Buddha wanted people to practice it. Right? Follow it. That was the idea. Practice and follow it. So therefore the whole idea was Dhamma Vinaya means teaching and the practice. So in that sense, these two terms are very important to understand, because it gives how Buddhism would perceive itself. So Buddhism would not call, now Buddha is not a god. So Buddhism cannot be really defined in a regular sense. Okay. But in Buddhism itself, Buddha has viewed his system as a combination of teaching and the practice. Okay, I think we are coming to a conclusion of our discussion. What I try to do today is basically in this initial discussion to show you how that word religion has been defined by different people. Okay. Now we found basically that religion is defined as something centered around a personal God. Okay. And then we looked at some other characteristics associated with religion. Right? Different definitions, different characteristics associated. And also we saw that as a general term, the religion is used to refer to 4 different things today. Even if you don't use the word religion, we can say Buddha Sasana. But when we talk about Buddha Sasana today, we are talking about all these 4 things actually. So in that sense, Buddhism is also a religion. I'm saying this because sometimes people ask, is Buddhism a religion? Now how are you going to answer that question? Some people will say, no, Buddhism is not religion. But we have to be careful. According to the dictionary definition, we can say that no, Buddhism is not a religion in this sense. But on the other hand, like any other religion, Buddhism has all these things. So in that sense, we can say Buddhism is also a religion. Okay. So in other words, what I am saying to you is, in some sense, we can say Buddhism is not a religion. Particularly the way it has been defined in the dictionaries, it has been defined in the scholarly academic writings as religion involving supernatural, superhuman being. We can say Buddhism is not religion. But on the other hand, we can say that yes, Buddhism is a religion in this sense. Now even in Buddhism, we know that some Buddhist traditions, like some Mahayana traditions, consider Buddhism to be almost a god. Now, their definition of Buddhism is very close to the dictionary definition of Buddhism. But when we talk about Buddhism, we have also to be clear that we are basically talking about Theravada Buddhism. Because not all Mahayana Buddhists, there are certain, like particularly Pure Land Buddhism, Sukhavati Vyuha. Pure Land Buddhism comes very close to theistic belief. It's very close. Not exactly same, but of course it is very close to believing in a theistic God. But in the Theravada tradition, we can say that basically Buddhism has been viewed as Sasana, Buddha Sasana, or Dhamma Vinaya. Okay, in my next session we will be continuing from that point of view. So thank you for participating for today. If you have any questions, we can spend a few minutes to discuss. Okay. Now we are not getting ready to leave. I am opening for discussion. Don't pack up things yet, okay? Any questions?
We have the disciple of the Buddha, like in the Mahavira Sutta. The Buddha asks the disciples any question, if you have any questions, that every month capture their silence in that time. Now we are doing the same.
But I am not trying to attain Parinirvana, okay, so you can ask questions. So if you don't have any questions, we can wind up. But please, if you have any questions, you can always write them down and bring them to the class. We can discuss with them if you have any. I mean, you don't have to agree with everything I say. If you have any disagreement, if you don't like something I say, you can always say, what does it mean? I don't accept that or something. It's perfectly okay, all right? So you can give your opinions. All right, then we will meet next time. Thank you very much.